I would like to discuss about the dark night of the soul and what happens when we consistently resist the dark night of the soul. So all of us before this incarnation make an agreement with the universe that we would like to spiritually awaken at certain times in our life. Okay. And the universe, being in collaboration with us, is like, okay, right? And we come into this incarnation. A lot of times we experience amnesia, right? Most people experience amnesia. There are many people who do remember, okay, their life energy before this actual physical incarnation, but vast majority have the amnesia. Okay, and when we have amnesia, it's very easy for us to slip back into familiar patterns of past lives. So familiar patterns can be like we are learning the same lessons again and again, right? Type of thing that before this incarnation, let's say that we didn't really we came into this lifetime. Every lifetime is just kind of, it's all bleeding into the next. Okay, so after this lifetime, the next lifetime will say it's a continuation. Okay, so that's why a lot of life lessons that we didn't learn in our past lives, they show up in this lifetime. Even our scars, our wounds, our fears, even people who've had memories of being in a traumatic, like church fire, for example, in a past life, and in this lifetime they have a great anxiety around fire, right? Because of that wound, right? That particular memory left such a traumatic imprint on that person, almost to the soul level, that it's been carried on into future lives, right? For healing. So every lifetime is a continuation, right? And these in between, there's like this in between period where we're in a fifth dimensional, higher dimensional vibration, and we are sort of mapping out, just like when we do vision boards, or we make lists, or we meditate to connect with what do I want to create in this life. We do that in before this life, in this higher vibration, and we even make agreements with other people, right? With our soulmates, with our soul tribe, our twin flame, even with spirit guides, even with angels, right? And we map things out. And the thing is, the more creative we become, right, in our self-empowerment from life to life, the more excellent our map making abilities will become, right? In our ability to come into this incarnation and to get a lot of things done, right? So a lot of times we spend many incarnations just really developing spiritually, right? To really strengthening our spiritual gifts and our strengths, right? So there's all these lifetimes you'll see, in spiritual scripts, where there's like meditating for like 3,000 years type of thing, and you're like, we only live to be like, like 70 type of vibe, and that's really talking about the lifetimes, lifetimes that we spend just meditating, just developing our spiritual gifts and strengths. Because in this planet earth, the human, especially in this time period that we've kind of jumped into, human beings haven't really are not very developed spiritually. Okay, but there are civilizations on planet Earth where human beings were very developed spiritually. And we think of like, pre-dynastic Egypt, and we think about like Lemuria and Atlantis, right? Where these civilizations, human beings, they had so much like spiritual development over many thousands of years, that it led to these booming civilizations that we know, that we meditate upon, where human beings were fully functioning in their higher incarnation, in their spiritual gifts, strengths, right? So we spend a lot of incarnations kind of developing that because we have to, right? What spiritually grows materially shows. So if we really want to, really step more fully into our dharma, step more feeling fully into our Christ consciousness, into our healing, we have to have a spiritual development. Okay. So, the dark night of the soul is kind of, I call it like a Pluto vibe. Okay. In astrology, we know the Pluto is kind of, companions with Mars. Okay, and if you know anything about the astrology, Pluto and Mars vibe is very intense. It's very powerful. It's very transformative, and it's very much like a Saturn return. When we think of a Saturn return, we think of a Pluto, sort of a Pluto stance, I like to call it. All of that is about the dark night of the soul. Okay. And the dark night of the soul has everything to do with, we cannot step more fully into our spiritual development when we have these limitations and we have these beliefs. Okay. That stuff has to go. Right. And I think, why people think death is so painful when actually being birthed, like coming out of the womb, is actually more painful than just death, is because we have so much limitation, we have so much belief system, and then when we die, we're making a choice to let it all go. But when we're so tight, we're getting so clamped to it, so tense, that attachment we have, it actually creates the pain. So, Kundalini Yoga is a yogic science and technology practice in these sort of civilizations, such as, a pre-dynastic Egypt, Atlantis, Lemuria, where, it was a deathless practice. It's like kind of overcoming death, and it's not just death as in, the flesh, like the physical body, your heartbeat type of thing. There are deaths that we're going to go through consistently throughout our life. And, that movement that happens, just like the seasons, it's a sign of health. If we didn't have these kinds of seasons on this planet, it would either be too hot, too cold, and there would not be much health, right? The cold, the snow, it kills off the bacterias that the summer kind of, if it's just hot all the time, it's going to be probably a lot of, bacterias, right? That are, could be deadly, right? So, all of that movement, that death and rebirth has everything to do with health. Just like why we circulate our energy, when we do exercise, we feel so good after, like our endorphins are like up and we're like, woo, right? Because we've moved energy, we've gone through a death and rebirth, and we love it as human beings. And that's why so many people on this planet love, like, what do you call, I call it like advanced thriller sports. thrill sports, where it's basically like you're rock climbing and you're horseback riding in like more of like a wild man, wild woman type of vibe, where you're actually in nature in a sort of intense way. That's a thing, wild adventure type of thing. And people love it because they get to experience the death and rebirth. So it helps them to become more deathless. And then when you become more deathless, you become more fearless because you don't have such a tension. You're not so, I can't let this go. I can't let it go. And then, your angels are looking at you like, it's okay. It's okay. Like some angels they have the patience of a saint. Our guides, ancestors have patience of a saint because, we can hold on to something that we need to let go of for years, decades, right? But because, we have amnesia, we're humans, we're in a sort of lower incarnation of ourselves, right? We don't have necessarily civilization right now in this time leap that is, like pre-dynastic Egypt, Lemuria, Atlantis, right? But we're sort of getting there. And that's why so many people are having a dark night of the soul, because we're actually, wanting to create a civilization on this planet, not now, thousands of years from now, where we are very much fully developed in our spiritual, spiritual gifts and strengths. Okay, so you know, humans have a lot of resistance. And, spirit guides know that, ancestors know that, angels know that, because, where we've been in this time period with this patriarchal dark age, we've had a lot of fear. Okay, we've had a lot of fear on this planet. It's just dumped into the psyche, and all of that fear has caused it has caused us to have a lot of resistance towards the unknown, towards the mystery, towards the wonder. While, if we're in a different time leap, in a civilization that, has sort of transmuted the fear and is not so much in the fear, all the time, we wouldn't be so as resistant to the unknown and to the mystery and to the wonder, right? It's actually more natural for us to be, it's more natural for human beings, or really all sort of beings, that the cosmos, to be welcoming of the unknown, right? Because the unknown, the mystery, the wonder actually brings like spiritual growth. It brings it brings life lessons that can be learned. It brings more of your strength to the forefront, right? And we want to work on our strengths. We don't want to, just atrophy and become dormant, because that's not really a life well lived, right? So when we resist our dark night of the soul, right, which, it's going to come at you in a way where it's going to be challenging, it's going to be uncomfortable. And if you're going through a Saturn return vibe, usually late 20s, early 30s type of thing, and, that can be a dark night of the soul of its own. Even what we call midlife crises is another Saturn return vibe with dark night of the soul. And all of that is about you are wanting to have a major life review, right? And if we're not honest with ourselves, and if we're trying to if we're trying to lie to ourselves, if we're trying to be, deny and ignore, it's just going to be so much more painful, and it's just going to be dragged out, right? Because this is your soul speaking. And, no matter how thick your ego is, no matter how whatever set in your ways you are, I mean, you can be a complete fixed sign, like real fixed, right, in your ways. And, and after 35, the dark night of soul, if you don't go through a dark night of soul vibe in early 20s or late 20s, and you never went through it, let's say you've pushed it back, and let's say, after you're 35, those dark night of the souls can be real intense, right, for a lot of people, because after 35, we get more set in our ways type of thing. So, the dark night of the soul for, let's say, the younger generation, it can come in, be very intense, because, the young people, especially younger than 25, they're not even really fully developed, right? They're not even fully developed. So when they get that dark night of soul, it can be even more like an emotional kind of because their hormones haven't even like set into place. Their hormones are still sort of jumping and moving around in this sort of sporadic, movement, right? But when we go through it, regardless if, past 35 or younger, the dark night of the soul, how we can best embrace that is to surrender to our feelings, surrender to our spiritual practice, surrender to the call of our soul. And how we best do that is getting a connection with our soul through prayer, through meditation, through the healing arts like Qigong, Tai Chi, the Bible, going to the Ganesh temple. There's so many ways, right? And that's going to really sort of alleviate the pressure that you're going to feel when you go through the dark night of the soul. That will give you a lot of grief, frustration, anger, resentments, and all of this, this has to do with karma. This is ancestral karma, childhood karma, past life karma. And, in order for us to step more fully into our dharma, which is our higher incarnation, we have to heal that. And I think, because we live such in a fierce society because of our patriarchal dark age, we're trained in many ways by society to just lie to ourselves, to ignore ourselves, to deny, and to live in judgment of ourselves, and to live unconscious, and accept that as that's our life, right? To basically be like sort of mediocre with ourselves, right? And then we become very weak, when we do that. When we're very mediocre with ourselves, we become weak in the way that, our emotions, we can't handle our emotions, we can't handle our mind, we can't handle our body. It's all these things that we just can't handle. And the dark night of the soul, in many ways, is a way of get us kind of getting stronger, right? Because the more honest we are with ourselves, the less we're going to feel weakened by the quite dynamic and quite explosive universe that we are all in. So, the dark night of the soul is going to come for all of us, especially because Earth right now is, I live in the US, and especially the US is going through a major Pluto stance. Okay, and that's really, sort of everywhere, right, on this planet. And when you have this major Pluto stance with death and rebirth, and there's such a death vibe, right? Such a death vibe everywhere. I mean, death, you look on any sort of, media platform, and it's just death, 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 death by the thousands, no, the millions. And it's just like, you just cannot escape your own personal dark night of the soul. You just can't, because it's everywhere around you. And I think in many ways sometimes the earth sets it up that way, because we, like I said, we get amnesia, we get so resistant, we would drag it out this whole life and not do it at all if our unconscious self had the choice. We would not awaken, because that's how resistant we've become, because of this fear that been dumped into the psyche for so many generations upon generations, right? Just to make ourselves feel safe, right? So we were willing to compromise freedom for safety, right? We were willing to compromise freedom, which is the spiritual evolution, spiritual growth, for safety. And that's because of all the fear we've been in. Fear, when you look at like medieval art or any art, I like to look at sometimes art of like, early like America art, or, early, which is like European art basically, like, and then going into like the medieval art, Romanesque. There's just so much like men just fighting. Like, it's just like fighting. It's just never ending. So, that's where we come from. And I think, we have to pat ourselves on the back that, we actually still are intact in many ways, even though we're still, have a lot of this trauma that we're harboring inside of us. But, that dark karmic debt, that negative karma, the dark night of the soul is Mother Gaia, the universe's way of trying to neutralize that, trying to correct it, trying to put us on the path of our higher incarnation. Because, now is the time. It's like we have to choose, do we want to be in a lower incarnation, or do we want to be in a higher incarnation? Sometimes, because we lie to ourselves so much, we actually get ourselves into like dilemmas. Like we get these karmic debts, we get these ties, we create these situations that, if we were honest with ourselves, maybe we could have rose above that and not even created that. And that's the thing, when you are not paying attention and you're not listening to yourself and that kind of thing, you can find yourself in these dilemmas with these people, with these situations that really have nothing to do with your higher incarnation. They're just life lessons. Their life lesson, is not a lifetime thing. You know what I'm saying? We get the life lessons so that we can grow and evolve and develop and move forward, not to spend the whole life force energy just kind of in that for a long time. Right? So I think, the dark night of the soul can be as really painful for those who have been lying to themselves. And the more that we've been lying to ourselves, the more intense that it's going to be. Okay? Because the dark night of the soul is really our chance. It's our chance to get into our higher incarnation. And all that karma, the ancestral karmas and generational curses and all that stuff, we have to get honest with ourselves about that, right? In order to create the healing and create the adjustment, the correction and the movement forward, to rehabilitate. Because when we're in such a fear and so resistant and stubborn and fixed and tense, we can become, we don't even see that we're just in a familiarity. We're just in a habitual familiarity, right? That we ourselves are not even stepping into our personal power, our free will and alignment. We're just stepping into what is easy, and what's easy for us because of where we've been is to just live your life unconscious. But, it may seem easy, but in the bigger picture of things, it actually is full of a lot of commotion and dilemma and complications that, just like when you set intentions, for your creativity, your prosperity, your wealth, I mean, we're pretty clear, we're pretty direct, right? I mean, these complications, these dramas, dilemmas is set up by a lower incarnational drag, right? That we spend so many lifetimes meditating, praying, doing the yogic science technology just so that we can build up enough energy to actually say no. And sometimes that can be such the huge moment breakthrough is to say no to something that is just draining on you. Which that lower incarnation, it's like, it may seem easy, right? It's easy to just, do that, but it actually drains you in the bigger picture to the point where you need energy. If we want to make quantum leaps, if we're trying to leap timelines from lower incarnation to higher incarnation, I mean, you're going to need a lot of energy to do that. Okay, and then the Matrix, everything about the Matrix that we know is like a bloodsucker. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we learn lessons on discernment. That's why we learn lessons on boundaries. And those life lessons can be like complete dark night of the soul, because it can be so painful. Because when Mother Gaia is trying to teach you discernment, sometimes you're into, you get some kind of experience that it can shock you in a way that can bring up a lot of fear for you to work through that fear. Right? So everything about the dark night of the soul is getting us to work through our fears, is getting us to do our soul work. And the more that we resist, the more painful it becomes, the more stagnant we become, and just the more like frustrated. I've seen people like who they keep, not, they don't want to go through the dark night of the soul, and they just look constipated. Like, they look spiritually, emotionally, psychologically constipated. It's like, you gotta let that go. You gotta eliminate. I mean, no wonder you're frustrated. No wonder you're looking kind of tight, and you look like you're looking kind of, where's the love at? It's because you're constipated, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually constipated. And, that's the thing is the elimination. A lot of that dark night of the soul, I feel, is more working with that Apana energy, that lower energy, lower chakra, which is about the releasing, the elimination, right? So that we can, when we have a really strong metabolism, when we're letting things process and digest and move through us and eliminate, we become a lot lighter, right? We can let things move through us. And we also, a strong metabolic system also reveals that we have a very strong ability to process life, and it's to process life, you need to have a strong metabolic system of like, of real strength to that, because the processing of life, because of where we've been in the karmas of it's not necessarily, you need a tank. You know what I'm saying? You need a belly that's like a tank. You need a metabolic system, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, that's like a tank. because there's so much just dumping into the psyche that has been dumping for so many centuries, thousands of years, that you need to have a tank to be able to digest that. And the dark night of the soul is trying to help you build up your ability, your natural ability, your spiritual ability to release these attachments. So when we start to just kind of move in the flow of our soul and step more into the unknown and the mystery and the wonder, and start to release the expectations and needing to know, the anxiety towards like wanting it to be a certain way, all the ego, you're going to find yourself going through the dark night of the soul, and you're going to start to, feel like more alive. You're going to feel like more of a flow. You're going to feel more growth. You're going to feel more breakthrough. The reason that we don't have breakthrough in the dark night of the soul is because of our unwillingness. Usually it's our unwillingness to let go and be honest with ourselves. And that could be like dark night of the soul is like, you're needing to like relocate. You need, your soul's, your soul work implies maybe you're meant to travel to this location. Maybe you're meant to be in this particular relationship, but you're letting yourself be in a dilemma of some kind of sabotage. Maybe it's about you need to be creative and share your creativity, but there's a dilemma. You're oh, I'm not good enough type of thing. Could even be a job. It could be completely changing jobs from like you're a lawyer, now you're like a high school art teacher. You know what I'm saying? So it can come through in so many ways, but usually it's going to be a transformation that is going to be so, it's going to be such a relief in the bigger picture, because you actually get to step more fully into your higher incarnation, into your conscious decision making, rather than the fear, lying to myself, lying to people, being deceiving to myself, and then being insecure, and then taking everything offensively, and then losing confidence. And that's not what we want. We need energy to make these leaps and to really empower ourselves in this life, and have that tank of a metabolic system. Because if not, we're constantly going to be at the mercy. We're constantly going to be weakened by all of the crises that happens on this earth, by all of this spiritual attack and all the dumping in the psyche, and all of these limitations of belief systems that, they're just waiting for you. They just want you to just kind of, be sluggish, right? To just be, afraid. Right? It's so, that's just the world, the polarity we live in. There's just waiting for just a little weakness to show up in some ways. So that's why, when you go through this dark night of the soul and you start to kind of have a spiritual practice, have a spiritual union, right, in your life, you start to really, really like rehabilitate the entire system that you are. And you start to upgrade the entire system. And what's going to happen is you're no longer going to be an offense to what was of the past. You're no longer going to let people take advantage of you. You're not going to put up with certain things. You're not just going to live in dilemmas. You're not just going to live in third parties. You're not just going to live in like relationships that it's not inspiring you. You're not just, you're going to really step more into who you are before this life, which is you have your creator and there's something you want to create, right? And it's not just creating, it's also there's something that we want to heal. I see that we come into this life to heal karma, okay, person, place, thing, but also to step more fully into our dharma. So I'm just going to leave you guys with this. This video is kind of long. It's like 30 minutes. But I feel like so many people are going through the dark night of the soul, and so many people are resisting it. And I can tell because they look constipated. And that's fine, but it's just like, buddy, just breathe, alleviate yourself, right? But there are a lot of people who are going through the dark night of the soul and are actually like liberating themselves and are just like becoming rock stars. And they're just like, they're just like really getting, having that spiritual union, really connecting with you know, their soul, and really getting honest with themselves, and like, you know, cleansing and purifying all of that dumping in the psyche that has went on for so many generations, and really like overcoming this fear. And you know, the best way to overcome fear is to become fearless, and we cannot become fearless until we recognize the deathlessness of us. And the best way to recognize that deathlessness is to really have a closeness, a fondness in a connection with your you know, your spiritual development, your psychic gifts, right? Which we all have, and we spend so many lifetimes working on them, and we still are working. Many people are still working on them through meditation, through prayer, through Bible recitation, right? And all of that is kind of leading to the same thing, which is we want to step into the fullness of our spiritual development. So I'm just going to leave you guys with this.